so they don't. Hello and welcome. My name is Kevin Dietz. I'm a veteran reporter here in Metro Detroit, and I'm very happy to be here to welcome you to the 25th annual Circle of Friends event, benefiting the children served by Care House. Thank you so much to everyone who worked so hard to make this virtual event possible. This event is an excellent time to take a moment to come together at the beginning of this new year and learn about the very real difficulties faced by our children in our community, as well as what we can do to make a difference. I'm honored to be here with you today, and I look forward to the excellent program that we have in store for you. So make sure you have a beverage on hand, because we're going to be toasting to an accomplished year, successful for the year ahead, and the fact that this is the 25th year of the Circle of Friends event. First, I'd like to introduce you to Care House President and CEO, Blythe Tyler.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you for being our host today. We're so happy you are able to join us. I'd like to take this time to recognize the original Circle of Friends, the event founders who have helped us bring this program and over $1.5 million to Care House since 1996. Doris August, Vicki Chelani, Janet Grant, Dr. Linda Serkis, and Lois Shefsky. And thank you to all of our patrons for Circle of Friends that continue to support us year after year. It's so nice to know that so many of our friends are with us today in this new virtual environment. I know you can see me, and I so wish I could see all of you too. I want to take this time too to highlight our sponsors this year. The Allison Family Foundation, thank you, Valina. Bank of Ann Arbor, Steve Guy and Pam Audette, you guys are great to us, thanks. The Berkshire, Melanie Bryant is one of our board members, and this is such a great business if you need to have a place for your puppy to go while you're out of town. Edward C. Levy Company, our board chair, Elliot Weiner, who you'll get to meet later, and TCF Bank. Bill Stacknick and his team have been supporting us for so many years. I can't wait for the next softball game. And Renee McLeod and Jerry Volis. Renee is our vice chair of the board, and I so appreciate your support. I'd like to offer even more thanks to our incredible host committee, which you can see on the screen. There's so much more that we have been able to accomplish with your dedicated assistance to Care House. So thank you. And finally, last but certainly not least, is our team here at Care House. Our staff is incredibly talented and passionate, and they have shown up every single day through this pandemic to help each and every child that walks through our doors. Before we move forward with our program, there are a few things that I would like to review about Care House, as well as share important information that can be helpful in understanding the landscape in which we work. Care House of Oakland County is a children's advocacy center. We provide first-rate services to victims of child abuse and neglect, and have done so for more than 40 years. We currently offer an array of programs that focus on identifying and treating child abuse victims and on child abuse prevention. Our vision at Care House is to impact the safety of every child in Oakland County through prevention, intervention, and treatment. We offer all of our programs at no cost to clients, and our programs are unique to Oakland County. There is no other organization that provides our services. Our programs are meant to combat the harsh reality that children in our society are targets for physical, emotional, and sexual abuse, as well as neglect. I also want you to be aware of this. 1 in 7 children experienced child abuse and neglect over the past year. 1 in 7. 1 in 10 children will be sexually abused before they turn 18. If you take a look at Oakland County, 1.2 million people live here. 300,000 of those are children. That means that 30,000 kids in Oakland County alone will become victims of sexual abuse. We can and must do better. And that's the reason we're here today. Why we come together every year for the last 25. To educate ourselves about what is happening in our community and the ways that we can impact change.
Thank you, Blythe. It is so important to understand the ways that children in Oakland County are affected by abuse and neglect, and the myriad of ways that Care House responds through its incredibly valuable programming. Care House has had the help of many people over the years, and today the agency would like to highlight one such person, Barry King. Mr. King was the father of the fourth and final victim of the Oakland County Child Killer in 1977, Timmy King. After Timmy was murdered, he dedicated his life to seeking justice for his youngest son. As you may know, the case still remains unsolved, but Barry was determined not to be bound by this devastating event, motivated instead to enact change through the Tim King Trust. Barry has supported Care House since 2010. Let's take a moment to give you a glimpse at the man who helped Care House and our community, Mr. Barry King. I grew up a few miles away from the King family, and I'm the same age as Timmy, so our family, like all families in the area, were pretty much paralyzed with fear as children started turning up missing. You know, about 15 years later, I came back to town as a reporter, and I started doing investigations, and one of them was looking into the Oakland County Child Killer case. And it gave me an opportunity on many occasions to sit at the kitchen table with Mr. King and talk about the latest new lead, and often about the disappointments in following up on those leads and a lot of the failures that police and prosecutors had in this case. Let me tell you a little bit of the background on the case. Between February 15th, 1976 and March 16th, 1977, 2 boys and 2 girls between the ages of 10 and 12 were abducted, held against their will, killed, and left outside for their bodies to be found. The 4 deaths triggered a national murder investigation for a serial killer. At the time, it was the largest investigation in U.S. history. The news media covered this case around the clock, 24/7 for months. Thousands of tips were given to police, but yet the case remains officially open and unsolved. Mark Stebbins, 12, of Ferndale; Jill Robinson, 12, of Royal Oak; Krista Mahalik, 10, of Berkeley; and Timothy King, 11, of Birmingham, are the known victims. Their families for 40 years have been hoping, praying, and ultimately, in some cases, conducting their own investigations to try and bring the killer or killers to justice. At this time, I'd like to introduce our panel for today's discussion. It includes 3 of Barry King's kids, Kathy Broad, and his sons, Chris and Mark King. We also have one of Barry's dearest friends and closest confidants and favorite reporter and favorite author, Marnie Rich Keenan. Kathy, let's start with you, and let's start at the beginning. When you think back to your brother's abduction, how old were you and your siblings, and what impact did it have on you and your parents?
Well, Kevin, I was 17. I was a senior in high school. Chris had just turned 16 the day before Tim was abducted, and he was a 10th grader. And Mark was 14 and a 9th grader in junior high. And Tim's abduction and murder imploded our family. First of all, there was the loss of our little brother, who was this really joyful little guy. We weren't allowed to process that. We had to be on display while we were grieving. We were told not to cry at the funeral because the killer would probably either be there or be watching. It killed my mother. She was, Marion was the glue of our family. So at a very young age, we lost our mother as well. Looking back on it, there was a sense that, we were very much on our own. The message was very clear: you need to sink or swim. But we always felt like, well, we'll meet on the other side of this, enough time will pass and we'll meet on the other side. And my mother never made it to the other side. Going back to the house where I was raised, it became increasingly painful. Holidays were something to dread. We lost the normal trajectory of someone our ages when this happened. I don't want to speak for my brothers, but it's no surprise. It's post-traumatic stress disorder. It's depression. It's tens of thousands of dollars worth of therapy. It's just a damaged family that didn't need to be damaged. What followed, no matter what stage you were at, I was going into college, and my brother still had to finish high school. Those were some very hard years, very hard years. And eventually the pain fades, right? And you put one foot in front of the other, and you make a life for yourself in spite of the damage. But then in this case, we, once we're making the best of our lives, we learn of the continued and ongoing treachery of the justice system in Michigan. And so we are victimized a second time. And this second time, it's been almost harder not to be derailed in my own life because of this. So, and it's a very long journey, and it's a lot to live with. And for my father, it was a lot to die with.
Chris, one day you guys were a typical family, and the next thing, everything was just changed forever. Can you tell us a little bit about your brother Timmy and what life was like after he was taken?
Like Kathy said, Tim was a wonderful kid. He was a joy to be around. He had a great sense of humor. You're from a big family. Sometimes kids have shifting factions, but everybody got along with Tim all the time. He loved sports. He played baseball, hockey, basketball. He was the smallest kid on all of his teams, but he was an all-star. And he had a paper route. He delivered the Detroit News in the afternoon. The 70s were a lot different. He peddled papers on his bike after dark in the winter and collected money. Very responsible kid. And that's why when he didn't come home, everyone was shocked, because at that point, after the third victim, people knew there was a serial killer. So everyone jumped to the conclusion that this could be the case, and unfortunately we were right. And I will give credit to the police departments who searched for him immediately because they knew the gravity of the situation. But as I think back on that, I can't imagine a more horrific scenario for my parents and our family. Tim is missing. He's probably in the most nightmare scenario you can think of. He probably knows he's not coming home, and we prayed that that was not the case, but unfortunately it was, and it's almost impossible to describe how hard that was for our family, for Tim's friends, for the whole community, and it was a difficult time.
Mark, this was happening in one of the wealthiest communities in the country, maybe in the world. It was a media circus. I'm wondering, were you kids aware of the media circus that was going on? Was there a feeling that like this wasn't supposed to happen here? And I'd also like you to share your memories of Tim.
I can remember the police doing their best to keep newspapers away from us, not to allow us to tune in to the local news stations at the time. We had a policeman staying with us 24/7 while Tim was missing. But, we were kids. We wanted to know what was up, and it wasn't that tough to get out of the house and go down to the store ourselves and take a look at newspapers and get caught up. As tough as that was, as young as we all were, we all wanted to know what was happening. And we would learn years later that, my mother did an unbelievably great job of getting out and cutting about every article out of every possible newspaper and magazine to keep in a box in her bedroom for many, many years, which I know that we all got to reference as we look back on the case. A lot of what my mom was able to archive was very useful for us as we dug into the case 30 years later. And, when you're 14 years old, as I was at this point in time, and living in Birmingham, a place like Ferndale seemed very, very far away. It didn't seem like, a couple of cities over. It seemed like it was, on the other side of the world to us who lived in Birmingham. And certainly when you live in Oakland County, I think, people at the time felt pretty safe and pretty isolated. But I can still remember my dad telling Tim if one of these creeps ever came up to him to yell and run as fast as he could away from him. So at that point in time, after 3 kids were missing, we were still very aware, but I believe there's still that in the back of your head, you feel protected, you feel isolated in Oakland County at the time. And we would only hear years and years later of the very many bad people living in the area that were doing very bad things to little kids. And somehow or another, that was looked over or looked past by people who knew what was happening. Birmingham is one of those neighborhoods where the cops knew what kids were causing mischief and throwing eggs at people's houses and toilet papering people's trees. They certainly knew of a convicted pedophile living in their midst. and yet nobody ever heard about it.
Yeah, Marty, we all felt pretty safe in these areas. In these particular cities, some of these cities don't have any murders at all, let alone child murders. And for a serial killer to be out there taking kids, keeping them hostage for several days and then killing them, do you think the police knew what they were doing, or were they in over their head? They had a lot of people, but do you think they were up for the challenge?
I don't, and I don't really know. I know that the kids were abducted from 4 different areas, and they were dropped off in another 4 different areas. So you have 8 jurisdictions, and 8 law enforcement agencies just super eager to to pounce and to try and find some leads. So I think there was that. I remember Tom Ashcroft, who is Christine Mihalik's father, saying at one point, and I think he said it at your house, was the only good information he could get was from a television cameraman, because the right hand didn't seem to know what the left hand was doing. They had blinders on. I think we all had blinders on. We've talked about the enormous prevalence of pedophiles that were in the area right underneath our noses.
Kathy, you talked about the trauma your family has gone through, and I know your family's such big supporters of Care House. Can you talk a little bit about how important it is for families who go through something like your family has gone through to have a resource like Care House?
It is so important, Kevin, for a family to have assistance and support navigating what hopefully will be a journey of healing and truth. Twice as many sexual assaults happen on kids under the age of 17 as happen to adults, although no one talks about it. So the child, the victim, and the family feel very alone. Statistics from the Department of Justice are that only that 86% of sexual assault cases on children are never reported. So what Care House provides is a way to talk openly about what happened, to help heal the child, to help the family from becoming destroyed, and also to stop an abuser who, if unnamed, will go on to offend again. So there's kind of 2 things going on there. But the family, that Care House exists to provide support, navigating this like terrible journey. I mean, the impact really, it's beyond words.
Marnie, you wrote the most comprehensive book on this case. What do you think happened? What do you think went wrong?
I think the reason the case was not solved was because of the cover-up.
Why did you write the book, and why is it important today, some 40 years later?
I wrote the book because I wanted to get the truth out, because I wanted to get as close as I could to the truth, and most importantly, because what happened in this investigation should never ever happen again. And if people don't know about it, history will repeat itself. And the other thing why I think it's relevant today is, this still goes on, and it's maybe it's called sexual trafficking, or it's on the dark web, but it's as prevalent and perhaps even more so than it was in the 1970s. The New York Times did a piece in 2019, I think, and they said that in 2018, There were 45 million videos and photographs of kids being sexually abused on the internet, the dark web, 45 million. And, you know, we're all appalled and we all just shake our heads, but you know, this goes on. I think we have a lot of ourselves to blame for our own denial. You know, look at the Catholic Church, look at Jerry Sandusky, look at Jeffrey Epstein.
Kathy, why is it important that people read Marnie's book?
It's important that people read Marnie's book because she tells the truth. It is the definitive compilation based on a very dogged investigator's investigation into this case of what took place then until the current day.
Chris, your family's been through, you know, untold tragedy. Is there a takeaway for other families? Is there something we can learn from what your family unfortunately had to go through?
Yes, there are a lot of lessons from our family that we learned through experience that other people don't have to. And one is that the suffering is not only for the victims and surviving victims, but it affects the whole family, it affects the whole community. And that's why organizations like Care House are so important, because the 70s were a different time. Therapists weren't there at the school to help kids. My own parents were very skeptical of any type of therapy, and we did not get help. The tricky thing about post-traumatic stress disorder is the word post. The onset of symptoms can be years and years after the event. So when I was struggling, a decade after Tim was killed, I didn't understand why. And luckily, I found a great therapist who helped me out. And I suffered unnecessarily for a long time because I did not know about these things. Care House is there to help the families, help the survivors, the surviving victims, and the families during the trial, right after the event, and years later, because these are lifelong situations to deal with. And luckily, I have a great sibling support system. My dad and mom were great parents who did the best they could. So we were lucky. We were lucky even though we're unimaginably hurt. And I'm very thankful that there's an organization like Care House out there to help other families go through these types of events.
Mark, your dad's passed away. He's with your mom and Timmy now. What message do you think they would have for all of us who are still here and still struggling with this tragedy?
I think, just to put it simply, they'd say try to find some happiness in life with what's left. Try to enjoy life and don't give up hope. I still think that there's things that can be done in this case. Maybe we'll never get complete closure or find out who did it, but if it can bring some more bad people off the streets and if we can stop other families and little kids from being impacted by something so awful, I think it would be great. So you got to keep fighting. And I think they'd also say continue to honor Tim's legacy. And I think, you know, that supporting Care House is something that does great honor to Tim and Tim's legacy and to my dad.
Marnie, do you have a closing thought?
Just simply, Kathy mentioned that some victims have come forward in the wake of the book, and 3 of them are women, and they suffered horrendous abuse back in the 70s. And for them, you know, they're now in therapy, but it was too little too late. And their lives now are revolving doors of panic attacks. That's the best way I can describe it. They didn't have Care House. They're in good hands now, but they didn't have Care House. They didn't have anybody to speak for them. And you can surely see how much they would have benefited, from something like Care House.
Kathy, closing thoughts?
My dad is gone, Kevin, but his message and his example are still with us. And part of that message is there cannot be silence in the face of such grave injustice. In April of 1977, when our mother and dad started this Tim King First Fund and then Trust, it was to honor his memory. And I'll just read from that letter. It says, Tim was a very special person to all of us. As the youngest member of our family, he brought special meaning to all our lives. Your generosity will enable us in some small way to help other children in a manner which he would enthusiastically approve. So,
Great.
we enthusiastically approve of the work being done by Care House. You need this now more than ever.
Chris, closing thought?
My dad's message at the end of his life was sort of two-pronged. One, he wanted the truth. And two, he was very frustrated at the lack of cooperation between different jurisdictions and different levels of law enforcement. His hope was that everyone would work together to help the victims. And that's what Care House does. It's a neutral party. It advocates for the victim and tries to foster cooperation between various arms of law enforcement. And for people who are skeptical about a cover-up, well, there are other prominent cases, the Adam Walsh case, the Columbine case, where fewer than 40 years after the fact, police released all the evidence, in many cases on CD, and that actually helped the public understand what happened and lead to breakthroughs in the case. So if Barry wanted the truth, that can be done. Let's release all these files and let investigative reporters and people understand what happened here.
Mark, we'll finish with you. Closing thoughts?
I couldn't have said it much better than my sister and brother just did. So I'd just simply say, thank you for honoring my dad, Barry, my mom, Marion, my brother, Timmy. Care House does great work to speak in a loud voice for those in need. And to Chris's point too, the facts are facts, and I believe, in our case and in many cases, the transparency that is necessary for healing needs to be front and center. So thank you.
I want to thank the panel for sharing. These stories are so difficult. They really are. And they such an impact on family members. And in the cases of these 4 children, they were taken from the family. In other cases, the children and the family members are left to live with and work through the emotional damage that these attacks leave behind. That's why Care House exists. That's why it's so important to speak on behalf of the children who can't speak for themselves. And to help us now bring justice and awareness to all of this, we want to, and to give a firsthand point of view, we want to bring in Care House's Board of Director, Elliot Weiner, with more. Elliot?
I wanted to take a moment with you today to let you know why I chose to get involved with Care House. As you heard earlier, 1 in 10 children are victims of sexual abuse. As a father of 3 young boys, this spoke to me. After meeting with professionals of Care House and better understanding the quality of service Care House offers, it was clear, not only is there a deep-rooted dedication to victims, but also a commitment to prevention of child sexual abuse in our community. I encourage you to think for a moment about what Care House means to you personally. Even here in our community, our home, we know abuse is happening. I know as I listened today, it struck me that I'm just as vulnerable to this happening to someone I care about. Even though Tim was abducted more than 40 years ago, it was less than a mile away from my home now. We can do better than this, and we can drive change together. I want you to think about your own reasons and use that as a reason to uphold the tireless efforts of the professionals at Care House who devote themselves to the well-being of the children of Oakland County every day.
Thank you again, Elliot. Please continue to donate to Care House. They rely on your support to provide critical services to children who are victims of abuse. And here's a great incentive. We have a special gift for all those that have attended today. Marnie Rich Keaton, the author of The Snow Killings, has invited you to join our virtual book club on March 9th. There are 2 times to join, 11 a.m. or 7 p.m. If you've already donated at the $100 patron level, you're good to go. You're all signed up. If you haven't, there's still time. When you donate at the patron level or above, you will receive an autographed copy of Marnie's book and an invitation to the book club as well. You can do so right in the chat. I believe the team is adding that information right now.
I am so thankful we had the chance to be together today, even if it was just in spirit. I hope that everyone can leave with a better understanding of what children experience when they suffer abuse and neglect, as well as what we do here at Care House to help them heal. I certainly look forward to seeing you on March 9th for the book club, and I'd like to thank Marnie for offering her time. It is obvious when you read the book that it was a labor of love and that she poured every single ounce of her journalistic skill into researching and organizing this case. Kathy, Barry's daughter, mentioned to me that her dad was hopeful. One of the outcomes of this event would be that so many more people would be exposed to and read Marnie's book. Before we say goodbye today, I'd like all of us to grab that drink and to make a toast. To Barry King and the King family, who have generously helped heal so many children through Care House. Barry's love of Care House and his dedication to the children of Oakland County will not be forgotten. And to all of you, our circle of friends, and to our 25th anniversary, here's to being together again soon.
As a founding member of Circle of Friends, I salute you, Care House, in hosting this event for the 25th year. Cheers to you, and wishing you many more years of success.
I want to join with everyone else congratulating Circle of Friends on their 25th anniversary of helping children, raising awareness, educating, and preventing child abuse. Congratulations to all of you for your hard work and accomplishments.
Cheers to 25 years of Circle of Friends.
Here's to 25 years of Circle of Friends. Congratulations.
Happy anniversary, Circle of Friends. Thank you for all you do from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you, Circle of Friends, and congratulations for 25 years. Thanks for honoring my dad, Barry, today, and my brother, Tim. And we certainly appreciate everything you do for those in need. Congratulations.
Here's to a great event supporting an even better organization.
Cheers to the 25th anniversary of Circle of Friends.
Cheers to all of you who are committed to the Circle of Friends event and its purpose. Happy 25th anniversary. Thank you for joining us. Stay safe and enjoy the rest of your day.